Hello and welcome back to the Rekt Capital channel, and welcome to today's video update about Bitcoin. And we are witnessing history in the making. This trend line back all the way to mid-December 2017. This has been a significant trend line ever since. It's been a multi-year trend line, very significant point of rejection on many different occasions, on a few occasions right over here. And even most recently, 2 weeks ago, when a lot of people were getting very, very bullish about FOMOing into this wick, FOMOing into a rally that was still very transient past this black diagonal resistance, because this rally over here wasn't yet confirmed in a weekly candle close like it is now, right? So because it wasn't confirmed, we got a receding in price. We got a pullback, a FOMO wick, which ultimately closed below the resistance, but of course a week later we actually got a breakout which was confirmed. So my point here is that more people were bullish about Bitcoin in this FOMO wick when we saw a rally straight into this multi-year resistance. More people were bullish back then than they are bullish now, which is just very paradoxical to me, because there is actually more reason to be bullish right now than there was 2 weeks ago, because of course this wasn't yet a confirmed rally, and it was actually very wise to just wait for that weekly confirmation. And as you guys might remember, this is exactly something we were talking about in the moment at that time, to just wait for that weekly candle close. And I did exactly the same thing here, waiting for that weekly candle close, and we got it. And now history is in the making. I'm just very excited to see this, because these are moments that we wait for a extended period of time, and we always wait for a certain resistance to breach, and sometimes it takes such a long time. It's taken so long for this resistance to actually be breached on a weekly time frame that when it actually happens, we almost don't know what to do about it. And many people I'm actually picking up on this sentiment right now on Twitter. Many people are starting to come up with excuses, or at least ideas that, well, we have a different resistance. This resistance here is the next one to be breached, or whatever the case may be. Yes, that is true. 10,400 is this very key resistance area right over here. That, of course, needs to be breached, but this area, though significant and a very strong supply zone, the fact that we've seen a weekly candle close confirm a breakout from this macro market structure means that this area of supply is under a serious threat right now, and that Bitcoin could potentially manage to break past it. Because if we think about this confirmed weekly candle close on a higher time frame, which is essentially the weekly, we very rarely see a confirmation like this outside of a black diagonal, and then we see a pullback back into that structure. We don't see fake outs in the form of candle closes past very key areas of resistance. Of course, yes, we see wicks past these resistances, because this is essentially the elastic band analogy, where people FOMO in and then the elastic band snatches back into the structure. But in any case, we actually have a crystallized amount of buying, crystallized buy pressure outside of the structure. And now we're not seeing a declining tendency in selling. Sellers are no longer selling at lower and lower prices. This tendency has now been invalidated, and that is a very strong and tremendous shift in market psychology, market seller psychology. So it's very interesting to see how this long upside wick, this upside FOMO wick from 2 weeks ago, more people are bullish about it than they are bullish about this confirmation, which just goes to show that emotion and logic, they don't mix well together. And it's very interesting to see how most people, or at least their reactions towards this confirmation, is surprisingly tame. Maybe this will change in the future, but of course, in the short term, we could expect a pullback into this support, or at least this old resistance to test it as a support, just to test this diagonal as a support. So above 9,100, keeping above that level this week and in the weeks that are yet to come, that would be fantastic news. But in any case, this is already fantastic news. Confirmation comes in two stages: a candle close past a resistance, and then a pullback to just test that new resistance as a new support, and then springboard into trend continuation. We have half of that confirmation in the books right now, and now we're waiting for that second confirmation if we're lucky enough to get it. But it's very cool to see that this marks a tremendous shift in Bitcoin's price action. We are in a new era for Bitcoin's price action. Now, the question right now is Bitcoin in a bull market? Now, if we just look at this multi-year trend line, breaking that trend line means that we are ushering into a new era for Bitcoin's price action. So bull market or not, whatever you want to call it, this is a new era. This is the beginning of a new trend, even though we might not see it, even though we might still get some consolidation, because after the halvings, we tend to see very uninteresting price action in the weeks after the halvings. So consolidation, a pullback into the support, and then consolidation for a while before actually taking off. It's actually a very realistic scenario to anticipate. But in any case, it is a new era. It may not feel like it because we've been waiting for this era for such a long time, but it is definitely here. And what we do going forward is just planning for that post-halving exponential rally towards the upside to new all-time highs next year. And for this year, as you guys know, in terms of the 1, 2, 3 candlestick formation that I've been talking about on my 12-month Bitcoin price chart, this is the year where Bitcoin needs to challenge for 14,300, that 12-month resistance, and it needs to close above that level. December 31st, midnight UTC, Bitcoin needs to close above 14,300 this year, and the fact that we're seeing a new era for Bitcoin, this breaking past this significant trend line dating all the way back to mid-2017, well, it's a very real possibility that we could actually challenge for this resistance later this year. So even though we're not seeing much happen right now, it is something to really get excited about. And this is especially something I was talking about in my previous webinar, outlining all these key levels in my post-halving strategy for Bitcoin. And one of the recurring questions in that webinar was, what is my post-halving investing strategy for altcoins? Well, you guys can find out this Thursday live, May 21st at 7 p.m. UTC. Pre-order discount of $4.99. Reserve your spot today if you'd like. It's a really cool session to just answer questions from my side and from your side, to just ask those questions. It's very interactive, lots of amazing engagement last week at the webinar when I was talking about my post-halving investing strategy for Bitcoin. Now I'm going to talk about altcoins in terms of my post-halving investing strategy. So this webinar will be recorded. If you can't attend it live, then of course you can watch a recording from it. So having said that, feel free to join the webinar this Thursday. It's going to be an awesome session, like it always is with you guys. But let's dive into what I'm looking at on the short term in terms of Bitcoin's price action. A few days ago, I charted this flag. And of course, remember guys, that this black diagonal resistance is the one that we've already breached, right? So if we go back here, this is the black diagonal resistance that I'm talking about in respect to these two flags. And this flag over here, of course, represents the March rejection caused by the situation that we're all familiar with. Whereas this flag right over here, well, a breakout past this black diagonal resistance, which is the weekly resistance, this was essentially a prospective trend line. And if you'd like to learn how to draw these prospective trend lines based on really one data point, feel free to check out my course in the description down below, my TA course. Because ever since, we've seen that there is a tremendous point of contact, a tremendous point of rejection over here. Based on one data point, I was able to outline this prospective trend line, which has figured as a significant level ever since for the past 4 days, 5 days really, if you count this pullback. But in any case, this is essentially the flag that I'm watching for on the daily time frame. And the significance of this is because we've closed on the weekly outside of this macro market structure, we have now transitioned into this daily flag. And if you guys can notice right over here, ever since we got a small rejection from here, a few days ago we pulled back into this black diagonal resistance of the macro market structure, which we've actually weekly closed above. Most recently, we actually got a successful retest over here, right? Picture perfect, in fact. So that's fantastic to see. A U-shaped reversal back into the blue diagonal of this flagging structure. So now we're in the flagging structure. And of course, it is possible that we could meander within this flagging structure, but ultimately, we'd want to see the upper half of this flagging structure remain intact with this black diagonal weekly resistance holding as a support. So it would be great to just see meandering within these narrow parameters, price compression happening over here before actually breaking out towards the upside, because once we see a breakout towards the upside, then 10,000, the 10,000 resistance, the 10,000 inflection point, the psychological inflection point for people will be challenged, and there is a good chance that we could actually see further continuation past that point, because a breakout from such a big daily flag, I don't think it will just stop at a 2% rally into 10,000 resistance. So I actually think that once we get a breakout past this flagging resistance over here, this flag, I feel like we'll challenge for 10,000 and beyond, actually challenge for the lower 10,000s, even 10,400. So that's something I'm going to be watching for. This is the daily flag that we need to pay attention to going forward. And just as a different perspective, if we think about price in terms of the monthly range, and you guys are familiar with this monthly range by now, 7,770 to 9,300, well, the range high is now figuring as a support, right? We even saw a downward wick past this range high resistance, which is now a range high support. And of course, this dashed green level is figuring as a bit of a trouble area for Bitcoin right now. But the main point to bear in mind here is that, of course, we are seeing a lower high tendency here, right? This is best shown on the previous chart in the flagging structure, right? This is the lower high resistance that Bitcoin would need to break past in order to reach this red area, which is essentially the lower 10,000s, which I mentioned before. So just claiming this level as a support would be fantastic to just bringing Bitcoin closer to breaching that flagging diagonal resistance. But in any case, what I want to mention to you guys is that every time we've seen a support test of the range high, we've actually managed a return to the red box. This of course happened as a very volatile wick and a support test on a lower time frame than the daily. But over here we actually saw a fake out past this range high support and ultimately a return to 10,500. So we could see something like that, especially if Bitcoin keeps this level as a resistance, and of course keeps this level as a resistance, or at least both of those levels as a support, to just breach that lower high right over here. And that would essentially mean that we'd return to this level. And that would be fantastic because we could actually challenge this level quite significantly. So this range high over here is a pretty important level in terms of its role as a support, because previously we've seen nice continuation into this supply zone, and the whole idea here is to just try and challenge this supply zone and get rid of that supply and potentially peak past it and turn it into a new source of demand. So that's something I'm going to be watching for going forward into the future. That's my view on Bitcoin going forward in the short term. But of course, we need to talk about altcoins very briefly here as well. Bitcoin dominance, market cap, right? Bitcoin market dominance. Because of the halving, we've seen a FOMO rally in Bitcoin's price action. People selling altcoins and just FOMOing into Bitcoin to just chase that rally. And ever since Bitcoin got a bit boring for investors who are just chasing that excitement, chasing the green FOMO candle, we've seen a bit of a drop in market dominance for Bitcoin. So altcoins have enjoyed some relief rallies across the board. But the thing to bear in mind is that this green area is going to be a directional bias level for altcoins or Bitcoin. So if we see a bounce from here, then of course Bitcoin is going to rally towards here. And I mean Bitcoin dominance. So we'll probably see a move from Bitcoin and we'll probably see dominance rally towards this black diagonal. And if we actually see a black diagonal breakout over here, then that would actually be a very bad thing for altcoins. We'd have to really limit our altcoin exposure, preferably to 0, maybe stay in a large cap like Ethereum, which actually tends to follow Bitcoin and is quite closely correlated to Bitcoin's price action as of late for the past few months, really. So a breakout past this level in terms of Bitcoin dominance, Bitcoin would make a sharp move and Ethereum would potentially follow if that move is actually a positive one, and it could be a positive one, especially if we break out from this flag. So those are some things that we need to layer together and just keep an eye on. But if we break down from this green area, then we could actually see a return towards the 200 daily exponential moving average on the Bitcoin dominance chart. So altcoins would have some respite, they would have their moment to shine for a brief period. But of course, we also have to bear in mind how this level would hold up. Would it give way to actual further continuation towards the downside, which would actually translate into altcoin rallies as well? So there are a few things to bear in mind. This green area in terms of directional bias, and depending on how Bitcoin dominance behaves relative to this level, we can adjust our exposure to Bitcoin or altcoins accordingly. And that being said, thank you so much for watching today's episode. Feel free to register for the webinar this Thursday. I look forward to seeing you guys there and chatting with you guys, and of course sharing my post-halving investing strategy for altcoins. So that's about it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world. Please consider dropping a like and of course subscribe for more videos like this in the future. I'm Rekt Capital and I'll speak to you in the next video. Speak soon.